everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and we will discuss on a very interesting topics. Our question for today's discussion with Lenovo is remote to be created an AI OS is current technology leadership about to be massively disrupted. We have our world famous speaker Professor Rob Enderle and Madam Ali Weiss. First, I would like to give chance Mr. Rob Enderle because of subject matter expert. How you want to define today's topic and question?
Well, with every major disruption, there's a chance that the existing power structure will cease to be. As we came up into the first computer age, which was largely driven by IBM, it was dominated by mainframes, originally card readers and tape machines, and then eventually terminals. And then the PC revolution came forward, and while IBM tried to ride that wave, now that the revolution's long past, IBM's one of the companies that doesn't even have a client device anymore. I've not only exited the terminal market, but exited the PC market as well. And a lot of the power players like DEC that existed at that time no longer exist now, even though they were very powerful during their period. And even some of the transitional players like Sun Microsystems, who were part of the revolution, by the end of the revolution, they were gone. By the time smartphones really came around and started to hit their stride, they were gone. And that's very likely here with the AI revolution now. And we've certainly seen indications that the existing structure is going to be challenged. We've got microprocessor development efforts in each of the three cloud providers, at least in the US. Amazon, Microsoft, and Google all have, or I should say Alphabet, all have major processor development efforts, raising the question of whether existing processor vendors will remain relevant. And now we've got a bunch of folks that are looking at developing their own operating systems. Lenovo is only one of them. We've got some startups that are looking at developing operating systems as well. And we haven't had operating system competition since the Linux tried to change the overall dynamic in the late 1990s and early 2000s. It still exists, but it's not any threat to Microsoft. In fact, Microsoft's embraced Linux at this point. So there's this huge potential for massive disruption where the major players that we're seeing, some of them may not survive. And one of the companies that I've been talking about that's on the backside of this is Dell, Lenovo's competitor. It's ironic because about a decade ago at Dell World, they had speakers that talked about this outcome, that AI was coming, it was going to be disruptive, that robotics were going to be the next big thing. And the damnedest thing was, it's like none of the Dell people actually went to that presentation. It's like having a crystal ball, but yeah, it's 10 years out. Who cares? So the end result is they've under executed, and now they're playing catch up, doing a pretty good job of covering up the fact they're playing catch up, but they're playing catch up, and IBM, who with Watson really has been the only major player in AI for the last 2 decades. We don't even really talk about IBM that much anymore. It's NVIDIA that rose from being a GPU manufacturer and mostly focused on games to being the technology behind the first true autonomous car that's now on the road from Mercedes, and the fact that they're seen now as the dominant AI player. And really, we went back 2 years ago, I don't think anybody would have thought just that they would be where they are today. So the level of disruption is significant, and it's across the entire ecosystem. Companies that are standing will no longer be standing once this is over. One of the interesting things that's occurring that's disruptive is typically with industrial revolutions, you've got new job creation that makes up for the jobs that are being eliminated. But in this case, the technology we're developing takes the place of standing employees, and it's being focused in areas where there aren't enough employees. And one of the areas there are not enough employees are in these new job categories that are being created because they don't exist yet, or at least they didn't exist a few months ago, and thus nobody's trained into them yet. And it takes anywhere from 12 months to 4 years to retrain somebody to some of these skills. In fact, some not even 4 years, could be 8 years if we're talking about data scientists. But you can spin up an AI to do that job in a matter of minutes. And so the competitive nature of people going after these new jobs is also going to be challenged during this revolution. So we've got a case of massive disruption where really no company will be safe, and a certain amount of turmoil until we hit a steady state surrounding this technology, and we kind of know who the players will be, because right now we do not. Now pass to Ali.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I did a little bit of research because I didn't even know what AIOS is, and it's obviously artificial intelligence operating system. And I'm not very technical, to be honest. So basically, that apparently manages computer hardware and software resources and provides common services for computer programs via general artificial intelligence. And it's a component of the system, apparently. So yeah. And then I was just looking about, essentially for me, it's worrying. It's worrying on one hand, because obviously it's taken people's jobs, and to a certain extent we're losing control, but there's also efficiency in production that's affected. So, as you said, that you can get an AI to transition, within a few weeks, as opposed to kind of training a human being, over months or years. So I think there's a massive kind of quantum leap that we need to make, isn't there? Or because it just feels like the industry is going to make that leap, whether we like it or not, really. So then I think I was researching actually Geoffrey Hinton, who apparently was seen as the godfather of AI, and he left Google, and he was part of the foundational work on machine learning. And his quote was that these things could get more intelligent than us and then take over. So I think for me, there's always been that kind of level of ethics and efficacy, and where we're going, and kind of the repercussions, and and essentially when we do things and we don't think about the repercussions, then it's too late once it's done it. So it's kind of similar to David Suzuki being a genetic scientist and pulling out, and it's because he basically got to the stage when he didn't agree with the ethics and the consequences of what was going on. So I think the thing is that there needs to be regulation and kind of a level of consciousness about what happens and what we do. So yeah. And I'd love to know who the other main players are, Rob, because you know much more than me and probably a lot of people that are listening.
Sure. Well, right now, a lot of the major players are some of the old folks. NVIDIA is really the company to start with. They're at scale, but you've got OpenAI, which is also looking at building their own processor right now, and is the technology, at least the initial technology, behind Microsoft's AI effort. Recently, they've just pretty much bought out another AI company and brought the people inside to develop internally, which isn't really is a best case idea. If you want to keep up with the way the market's using, you don't try to do it organically by by promoting people from inside, because they don't have the skills. You have to bring in people from the outside that actually understands the technology, so they can drive the company forward. And to Microsoft's credit, they've done that. As you look across the ecosystem, though, there are a lot of new AI players, and there are companies that can be kingmakers. Microsoft, certainly with OpenAI, became a kingmaker. NVIDIA, by their nature, can be a kingmaker just by aligning with people. They were the ones that highlighted just how far ahead Siemens was, for instance, in terms of AI deployment. And as I mentioned, they're the ones behind the Mercedes-Benz that just came to market in North America, which is the first level 3 self-driving car that's so far hit the market. But we're not done yet. We are still really early on. We've got companies that are focused on different parts of AI, they're more visually oriented. We've got companies like OpenAI that's more text and natural language oriented. It's really bifurcating all over the place at the moment, and eventually we'll hit a steady state. The big companies will buy up the smaller companies, and we'll get back to a few companies that are working on the technology. But it's probably going to be a different few companies than what we have now, which is what creates the drama. And as I mentioned, the other issue we've got that we really have to wrap our head around is the fact that the new jobs that are being created are very likely to be done by AIs, because there aren't people available to do it, which creates a fairly significant issue for us going forward, because the typical argument that we need to retrain our people falls apart if people are going to just spin up AIs faster than you can retrain somebody. So the result is we probably need to be focused a little bit more on instead of AI replacement, which is where a lot of this technology is. We've got a company that's actually marketing an AI employee right now. That you basically buy the employee from them. It's an AI and it does coding. Devin, I believe, is his name. They'll all be named Devin. But the end result is it's going to be problematic because what path is going to be your safe path going forward? And what's interesting is going back to that Dell event over a decade, I think about 14 years ago now, 12 years ago now, and one of the things they pointed out was at the time the belief was that AI was going to be mostly focused on hourly workers, manufacturing line workers, those kinds of workers. And what they came out with is, that's not where it's going to be focused at all, because those people are cheap. And the only reason you put AI there is if you don't have enough of them, which is one of the reasons why AI is being focused there, is because you don't have enough of them. But he said the economics really work much better for highly paid employees, people like me who do analysis, because AIs are really good at analysis, and they're a hell of a lot cheaper than an analyst. And then as you move up the fee structure, you start saying, well, what about CEOs? In fact, I think we actually have, if I remember correctly, last week there was an announcement of one of the newer AI firms talking about having their CEO be an AI. And because if you look at how far out of line CEO salaries have become, with some of the salaries in larger companies exceeding $500 million, you can spin up an LLM for $100 million. That's a lot of money, but you get a 5x payback in 1 year if you were able to use that thing to replace the salaries and benefits for one of these high-paying CEOs. So the level of disruption we're facing right now is absolutely unprecedented. And like any one of the feeding frenzies we've had in the past, and probably remember the internet feeding frenzy, where everybody and their brother had an internet product. Profit wasn't something anybody talked about. And if you were coming out of school with an engineering degree, you could get a brand new BMW and benefits and all that wonderful stuff. And then about 18 months later, the wheels came off the cart, and people realized, profit is important, and you can't be spending money at a rate 100 times of what you're bringing in. That's not an economic plan. We don't seem to be having that issue this time, but there is a feeding frenzy, and a lot of the investment money right now is flowing towards anything that looks like it's going to be capable with AI, and most of that money is going to be lost. Because we have not reached a steady state. So this is an area of investment that's going to be very lucrative, but it's also very fraught with danger. I mean, I guess the risk and reward is maybe somewhat balanced, because the reward's pretty high, but the risk is astronomical. So I don't envy my financial analyst peers that are trying to predict through this, because there really is no clear path at the moment.
If you want to add any point? The question is, how might Lenovo Dreamworks AI OS challenge existing operation system like Windows, macOS, and Linux?
Sure, I'll take that one first. The Microsoft's underlying core business is still, they've got their cloud business, but at their core, they were a platforms and tools business. And just like the chip manufacturers are developers, I should say, because most of them don't manufacture anymore. The chip developers are concerned about their customers developing their own chips. Microsoft should certainly be concerned about their OEMs developing their own operating systems. Now, the reason why you have an operating system for AI is much like you have an operating system for anything else. It's tuned for the AI. So existing operating systems like Windows, like Mac OS, were not created with AI in mind, but they were created, and many of them, and the core code goes back decades. So they haven't been tuned for AI, and AI is very, very resource intensive. In fact, right now, even though we have AI PCs in the market with 16 TOPS, and that's thousands of operations per second, the belief is it doesn't become viable until we get to 40 TOPS, or 40,000 operations per second. So we don't really even have a desktop platform that will effectively run today's AIs yet. Now, AIs will get more efficient and the technology will advance, and this problem will resolve itself certainly partially by the end of the year, and then it'll fully solve itself as we get through 2025. This technology is moving very, very fast. But the disruption of OEMs thinking about their own operating systems again is kind of like going back to the way the market was in IBM's day, where everybody had their own operating system, they had their own hardware, and they were vertically integrated. And that's kind of the way Apple is now. Apple has their own operating system, they develop their own chips, they've got their own hardware, they do outsource chip manufacturing, but to a large extent, they outsource regular manufacturing too. But to a large extent, other than manufacturing, they're vertically integrated. And so with Lenovo doing their own OS, it feels like the market might devolve back to that model where everybody kind of is vertically integrated. Their solutions are much more highly differentiated. Because remember the problem we had with the PC era that carried over to servers. It was hard to differentiate. The software, the operating system came from Microsoft, which anybody could get. The core hardware came from Intel or AMD, which anybody could get. And then the value add was kind of how you tuned the box when you're done. Maybe different memory choices, maybe different ways to handle the bus, maybe different ways to handle communication. But they were so standards based because you wanted to be able to plug stuff in and have it work, that it was really hard for the OEMs to differentiate. Where back in the prior period, differentiation was huge. I mean, the platforms were fundamentally different, and so you could more easily pick between them depending on what it is, where the vendors focused, and what it is you wanted to do. After the PC era, that kind of went sideways, and so what this could do is push us back into a time when people are much more vertically integrated. In fact, if you look over at the robotics, or even the autonomous car business, to a large extent, that's pretty vertically integrated. That's kind of, and appliances. Really, do we care what processor is an appliance? Do we care what real-time operating system is run on the more advanced ones? Probably not. Or what operating systems or platforms run in your cars? In fact, you probably don't even care the fact that you may have up to 8 different major processors and operating platforms in the car that you drive, which is by the way one of the reasons why cars today aren't as reliable as they could be. But the result could very well be a computer market that looks much more like the rest of the world in terms of cars, appliances, and the rest than it does now, where you kind of have this high level of commonality between vendors and a much harder time differentiating. So this OS effort does look like it could bifurcate the market. It could de-evolve it, potentially de-evolve it back to a prior period, particularly as you look at robotics. If you look at the Tesla robot, for instance, that is a vertically integrated product. It does not use a third-party operating system that they're willing to talk about. It probably does have an RTOS from somebody, but that's a real-time operating system from somebody. But it certainly doesn't run Windows. And the end result as we go down this particular path, there could be entire areas of the market that just simply become non-viable because there are no longer any customers for the products they develop.
Thank you. Ali Rice, what do you want to add?
I was actually looking at the pros and cons of AI and the operating system, and so I think AI is one of those things it's almost invisible, so people don't even realize it's doing some things that it does. So I think and definitely technically, when it gets to high end, it's quite difficult to kind of to explain how things work when you're kind of a layman or woman, so it's kind of, and I just think that there's a level of kind of social manipulation that could happen, or I was just looking at the social inequality, the surveillance side of things, depending on what field it's involved in, and there's definitely an argument to say you're weakening the ethics and the goodwill that might come from a human, resourced kind of operating system but then there's an argument to say there's lots of inefficiencies as well, isn't there? So, it's kind of, when you were calling call centers and you didn't get to speak to a real person, that's frustrating. So so it's kind of, but then if there's a more efficiency and that gets the job done correctly, then so it's kind of, so there's a balance between the two, I think. And so for me as well, there was also the autonomous weapon, the way that things could go if we weren't careful. Because that's definitely, isn't it? Elon Musk has also said that, is this true, Rob? That apparently him and 1,000 other tech leaders, in an open letter in 2023, said that they should pause on larger AI experiments, citing that technology can pose profound risks to society and humanity. So you see, that's somebody, is in the top level of the kind of field. So if he's got concerns, then we probably should do too, really. So I think it's kind of justification as to why we need to do what we do. But I think the thing is that technology fields are going to push it whether we know or don't know, aren't they? So it's kind of inevitable that they'll still keep pushing to see where it goes.
Yeah, that pause thing was kind of interesting, and the way the industry looked at it was, this is a bunch of guys that were behind on AI, and so they want the entire market to pause so they can catch up. Because clearly Musk didn't pause. He was full steam ahead throughout that entire period. I think the concerns are real, but the fact that everybody's racing to get this done first kind of makes any pause unlikely, if not impossible.
Yeah.
So, Sharif, you got a question?
Yeah, we have a question. I think, what potential advantage could an AI-based operating system offer over traditional OS platform?
Well, an operating system does best when it's designed for the purpose in which it's going to perform. So, for instance, if you've got, we saw that example play out with the Windows Phone. They tried to take a PC operating system and create a blend between a phone and a PC, and they're not in the phone business anymore. On the other hand, and this is kind of ironic, the guy that they hired to help them with mobile operating systems got fed up, went over to Google, created Android, a focused operating system on mobile phones, and that's been successful. It has a much larger market share than Apple does, and Apple was the one that started that last revolution. So an operating system that's built from the ground up to do a particular thing will generally be better than a general purpose operating system, especially one that predates the technology, that's being asked to function in a way that wasn't anticipated when it was created. It's like anything else. If you want to do something, there's that process that you could use a spoon or a knife as a screwdriver, but you're going to be better off with a screwdriver. So in a pinch, a general purpose operating system or a generic tool can do a lot of things, but you're always going to be better with something that was specifically designed to the task. And that's where an AI OS comes in. It's specifically designed for the task. So it'll optimize throughput to resources, to reduce latency. It will drill through applications in order to meet its performance goals. And will do so effectively, where a regular OS like Windows wouldn't even know how to, because it wasn't developed with that in mind, it wouldn't even know how to do it. Yeah, you could retune the OS, which is what Microsoft is doing, to try to address that. Or they've got this massive ton of legacy things that they have to remain compatible with, which makes it very hard for them to make this pivot with the same OS. Or if they developed a new OS for this particular purpose, they could get there much more quickly because they don't have to overcome all that legacy crap that has to remain compatible. So that's really what happens with a focused OS. It can immediately outperform a generic OS, and as long as you don't need it to do those other things the generic OS does, and I would argue with an AI you probably don't. It could work in parallel with your PC and Windows machine, and just provide direction into it, and basically use the same interface that you use to operate the operating system to operate it, because we work at people speeds, which means we're nowhere near the speeds that our systems can handle, and an AI OS could. So it would be much more effective on the same hardware that we use than we are, because it's operating at much closer to the speed that hardware operates at than we do, and it could bypass things obviously like keyboards and mice because it doesn't need them. Once again, lowering the increasing the overall speed in which it can operate. So its advantage is it's because it's designed to do a thing, it's going to be better at the thing it's designed for.
Thank you, Ali. You want to add any point?
Yeah, I was going to ask Rob what kind of the downsides are with as far as he can see, with the kind of speed of the development, really.
Well, so the downside with regard to the going this bigger route is, again, no legacy. So everything that you had before now becomes obsolete. So you've got the speed of being able to put aside the legacy, but you won't operate with it very well because it's almost all obsolete. But as I mentioned, there is a workaround this time. That workaround is to work in parallel with the older platform, and then you use the interfaces that are already there to interoperate with it. Then you gain all the interoperation from that older platform while you're still able to be performant doing the AI task you were designed to do. It doesn't really have to be an either or. It could be both but long term, one of those two things is going to become redundant. Long term, the new OS is going to learn to interoperate directly with the things it needs to interoperate with. And once it does that, then the older OS becomes obsolete. For instance, we're not really using a lot of those old OS. I mean, really, anybody ever use DOS anymore or MP3? It's on MP3. What's the other? There was an OS2. We were using OS2 anymore. I mean, they just go by the wayside.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ali. You want to add any point or any?
Well, does it mean that whoever wins this race monopolizes the market the ways like Google do or Microsoft so it's a genuine race to kind of have the power over everyone else? Yeah,
and once they get there, they're going to be harder as heck to displace. With each revolution, once the power structure is in place, it gets ever harder to displace them, which means they only get displaced to the next revolution. And we will have more revolutions after this. I mean, we've got the quantum revolution coming in after on top of this. And while it looks like they're going to weave quantum into AI, that might only be a transitory step. We're learning more and more about quantum technology as we go, and there's every likelihood that once we fully understand quantum technology, that the entire way we do computing may change. But that's a transition that's probably another 10, 15 years in our future.
What is simply said, what is quantum technology then? How is that going to be different?
Well, it's a completely different way of computing. With regular computing technology, you're talking about ones and zeros. You've got two states. With quantum computing, we have three states, so it changed the underlying foundation of computing. The very way we've got elements that we don't have in computing now, like quantum pairs. This ability to have two objects at significant distances interact with each other or react to each other instantaneously. These kinds of things we can't really even wrap our heads around because we haven't been able to throw them into a product. But once we do, and I should add, the other thing quantum computers is they're massively. We thought our existing computers were parallel. Quantum computers are massively parallel. They can take data sets that encompass the solar system, that encompass the planet, and they can chew through those in minutes. Where regular computers, it would take them years, decades, if not centuries, to cover that same kind of material. So their speed is unprecedented. The way they work is fundamentally different, and really at the very beginning of even understanding the technology, which means we cannot accurately forecast what will happen once it's mature. I mean, we've got quantum teleportation. We don't have regular PC teleportation. So it's really quantum will be potentially an even bigger game changer than AI does, particularly as we talk about taking quantum and layering it on AI and making AI so much more capable than people. I mean, I was looking at a chart earlier this last week, and it showed over the last 2 years that AIs in various fields were substantially below 2 years ago where people were performing. Now we're at peer level. They are able to perform in different tests where you cannot make a determination between a person doing it and the computer doing it. And we're still at the very beginning of this. So that 2 years they caught up to where we are. Where are they going to be 2 years from now? So the speed of advancement is unprecedented. Months might as well be years, if not decades, in previous waves.
Alex, you want to add anything?
Yeah, because that's my question was actually how it kind of affects, the world as it is. Because I think for me that there's a level, with the wars that are going on,
Right.
there's a level of humanitarian concern, it's worldwide. There's a level of, kind of distribution of wealth, poverty, and poverty and kind of what matters in life really, and the decisions we make, and whether that, that overriding kind of elite that makes those decisions for us, whether there's kind of an overriding kind of hidden agenda, or whether it's compartmentalized depending where you are in the world. And so for me, I think there needs to be a bigger question as to why we're doing what we're doing, as opposed to the fact that the industry is just going ahead full steam regardless of the implications of it all. Because I think the thing is, if it's making things better, or there's an argument to know whether what is better, and what, if it's replacing people's jobs so that that they have to move on and find reskill or do other things. So surely that there should be a reason why we do it, other than the fact we're just pushing to see how far we can go.
Yeah, sadly, that's not the way we do things. I mean, you're absolutely right. That's the way they should be done. That we should create a fictional, utopian world and then build towards that. That would be the right way to do it. But no, we're moving as fast as we can, and the end goal isn't clear. I mean, we have interim goals, like we want to improve customer company interactions. We want to increase the productivity of our employees significantly without having to pay them anymore. Those are all goals. I won't call them noble goals, but they are goals, and they're one way to be able to get a return on investment that's exceedingly rapid. But the world and most of the companies are operating tactically. That they want to hit that quarterly. They want to hit those quarterly numbers over and over again. In fact, I was lamenting with Pat, the guy that runs Intel, and he's just having a hell of a time because they're trying to build all this manufacturing capacity, which the U.S. desperately needs. But he's getting pounded for the economic investment because it doesn't fall within a quarterly envelope. It's going to take years to build out that capacity, and during those years, he's going to have to survive in the job. And he's getting pummeled, even though he's doing the right thing for Intel and the right thing for the United States. He's not hitting his quarterly numbers and won't be able to really hit the quarterly numbers hard until this thing's over, and then he's going to be in good shape. If you look at NVIDIA, this great, wonderful valuation that they've accomplished, it took 20 years to get there, and 20 years, and Jensen, who I also know, talked about the fact that if he worked at any other company, he probably would have been fired for doing what he did, because that was a huge drag on his income for those 20 years. And then when he went vertical, and he's the hero of the hour, but he was actually the hero of the last 2 decades because he was taking a massive risk bringing this forward. And we really do not. I would say here in the U.S. as a country, but I would argue we don't really, as a race, focus long enough and have reward structures in place that reward people for strategic decisions and building for a better future. We reward the heck out of them for quarterly results, which is why we have so many companies that spike and then go bankrupt, because they discover, hey, there's a great way to spike the stock price, get a ton of benefits, then I can retire, and the next guy has to deal with the mess. That's kind of what happened to IBM after Palmisano. He spiked his compensation, and Jenny Rometty, who replaced him, had that unenviable task of trying to put the company back together. And same thing with BK at Intel. Damn near sank the entire company trying to spike his comp. So the result is our structure right now just doesn't lend itself to long-term gain, because we certainly could use AI to create cleaner water, create cleaner air, to provide stronger benefits. At some point, people may no longer need to work, which means they're going to need some kind of an allowance so they can consume. Otherwise, what are all these automated factories going to be building for? But are we doing any of that? No. So the reality is like all the times before, nuclear energy being another example of where we just went, let's see what the crap we can blow up first. Great. And if you watch the movie Oppenheimer, you're reminded of the fact that there was a significant theory at the time that said that once you set off a nuclear reaction like that, it may not stop. It could cascade, and then you don't have a planet anymore. And it's not like we can just pack up and move to the moon or something. So the Hadron Collider, when they did the calculus of whether or not the Hadron Collider would create a black hole that would consume the Earth, it was 2 magnitudes in the wrong direction wrong in terms of the odds of that happening. And yet we still built the damn thing. So we're largely alive because those particular theories did not pan out. But at some particular point, one of those theories is going to pan out, and if we're not careful, we're just going to be another planet without people.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
Ali, you want to add any point, or you have any questions to Mr. Rob Enderley?
Well, because you were talking about legacy.
Yeah.
So I run an art class every week with primary school kids, and my art class just won a global award for their image they produced, but they did lots
congratulations.
of and one of the things that's really cool, it's run by the David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation, and David Shepherd was a wildlife artist that actually he was in the RAF, he was stationed in Africa. Someone else, I think he painted a plane for us, and they said, can you paint an elephant? And the rest is history. And now his granddaughter runs the organization. And I think it's incredible, that family legacy. And my brother worked in conservation for years as well. And one of the things, the David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation doesn't have gatekeepers that are making huge amounts of money, but it actually has an impact on the ground. And I think the thing is, it's about having purpose, passion, and an impact, so making a positive difference. So for me, because I'm a social entrepreneur really, and I think the thing is, it does matter what kind of state we leave the world in for our children.
I agree.
And, the children that I have and the children that I know, I just think they're incredible, and they're just so motivated and knowledgeable, and I think kind of have honourable, perspectives and kind of promise for the world. So, I think it's a shame that young people aren't kind of, I think it's a shame that young people don't get to influence things more, so that their kind of perspectives kind of embraced, instead of having this kind of negative. I don't know. I think there's so much promise and potential. And it's not anything to do with, with AI and where we're going to push the technology. And, it's about kind of finding their genius and going with it, so they excel in the area that they're destined to do so. So I think that's my take really. And I think kind of taking care of the environment or the place that you live as a community, so that, if everybody did that, it would be kind of cool. So, and I do think, we're all part of the problem and the solution. So, so I drive a petrol car at the moment. We don't have an electric car anymore. So, but we live in a rural area. So we, feasibly couldn't get to where we need to go on public transport very easily. And, but it's just making conscious decisions. And, there's no such thing as perfection. But I think the thing is kind of making step change so that we improve things for the whole as well as individually. So, and every single thing every project I've done has always worked on an individual and a shared journey. And I think the thing is that's what kind of, idealistically, that's how business should be, shouldn't it? So it's, it's not just about profit, but it's about people and planet and, preserving the natural spaces we've still got. And luckily, I spent so much time in the States, and you've got so much landmass and incredible wildlife, Rob, still. And, and we're a tiny country by comparison. So, so I think those, and it's quite funny that, the big moguls like Bill Gates have moved up to the north of America and bought huge, massive pieces of land, haven't they?
Well, to be fair with regard to Bill, but that was, he bought but if you're talking about building his city of the future, yeah, he's done that. He's bought a big piece of property. He thinks he's going to do a city of the future, which isn't a bad idea. We need more people thinking about how we're going to build cities using the technology that's being developed, as opposed to building them historically. Because if you've been watching the news, we just had a series of tornadoes come through and wiped out a large swath of the country again this year. Because people haven't been building appropriately to weather those kinds of storms. And clearly, as weather change becomes more prominent, we're going to need to change our building methodology so that stuff survives these weather events that are becoming increasingly more common. But the difficulty really comes back to, I think, comp. The way we compensate our executives is largely focused on tactical returns. And as long as we do that, it's hard to argue that executives aren't going to focus on tactical returns and not on the strategic. I mean, if you take an executive that really is interested in the environment, that really wants to go green, that really wants to help their community, chances are you're not going to last very long unless he first and foremost it's all his revenue and profit targets. Now, if it's his revenue and profit targets, he's allowed to do that other stuff. But if he has the revenue and profit targets, it doesn't matter what else he's doing; he's still going to get fired. He or she are going to get fired. So the result is that's kind of the role that government then needs to step in and do. And this is actually a role that AI can do. The AI is as it gets developed will be eternal. It doesn't have a life expectancy. It doesn't have a period of time when it can work, and it'll become obsolete over time, but it can be upgraded. And the end result is we could create systems that at least would better show the consequences of the decisions we make. So if we're fracking, we could project forward and show the impact on the community and the planet by doing fracking, which generally is pretty bad. And help governments maybe come back to the idea that maybe you don't want to do fracking. I mean, maybe you want to leave a lot of that oil where it is, where it's not doing any harm because it's large carbon capture. And since we can't do carbon capture at scale yet, maybe leaving the existing carbon capture system that has worked historically in place, at least not disrupting what's already been captured, would be a great idea in terms of preserving the planet. But like you pointed out, moving away from electric cars to gas cars, a lot of people are doing that right now. We're actually stepping back and going away from the more sustainable vehicles and going back to gas cars because it's more convenient. And as long as we're making decisions, which is a tactical decision, we're making a decision for short-term convenience over long-term health. And you could certainly argue, well, how can any one individual making that switch make a difference? But the problem is we do it at scale. If you do it and I do it and Bill across the street does it, that becomes a trend, and now everybody does it. Electric cars are gone, and we take another step backwards. So, and by the way, I'm not complaining about your choice. It's my electric car's gone too. My electric car's gone too, and I'm back to a gas car for some reason. So the result is in terms of driving this kind of change, the place where AI should be focused, it should be focused on our weakness, our inability to think through consequences, our inability to think strategically, our inability to really make long-term plans to assure the health and freedom of our citizens, not next month, but next decade, or next century, making sure the race survives on a continual basis. It should be more important than it is, but right now it's kind of number 101 on a list of 2,000 items, and with only 50 of them we can address. So it's just we're not making the progress that we should. AI could help, and in the end, we may, on the path we're on, we may end up with a world of AI, and AI is going to be our legacy, and maybe we only have a handful of people at the end of the century. I don't think that's the income we want, but that's kind of the income we're working towards.
Ali, right? What's your closing remarks for today's session? Any comment?
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of regulating what happens if it's possible, so that there's ethics and efficacy in the way that we do things. And obviously there's massive advantages with efficiency and production, but it needs to be fit for purpose. And as I think the thing is that human beings still need to have that level of control. So we don't want to get to the stage when the AI has so much self-awareness that it does things that can cause kind of collateral damage, or that causes huge problems that we can't undo.
Yeah, to your point, we've had a number of movies that have attempted to talk about this, from Colossus, the Forbin Project, to more recently Terminator. Both of them had similar themes. AI becomes very powerful. It looks out at the planet and says the problem to be fixed are people. And really, it's while that's fictional, it's hard to argue that isn't exactly the problem to be fixed. I mean, if you're in the AI's place, right now, wouldn't you come to that same conclusion? I
Yeah.
mean, the wars that are going on, both of them are stupid, and I mean, it colossally. So the collateral damage to Russia and Israel is immeasurable for the moves that they've made.
Yeah.
It's colossally stupid, and so really, if we want to create a better world with AI, the people that really need to have AI are the people that we want to be successful, the people that want to protect the environment, the people that want to be able to showcase the damage in the future. They should have the simulation tools to make their arguments and showcase that, hey, we need to make these changes, and we can use artificial intelligence to make the changes, but focus the changes on making the world a long-term sustainable place. One of our leading astrophysicists popped up and said, if we got the technology to turn Mars into a habitable place, we got the technology to turn Earth back into a habitable place.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe that's where we ought to focus it first, because geoengineering a planet is not going to be easy, especially one like Mars, where they have no atmosphere and no way to really retain the atmosphere, which is a problem. Here in the U.S., we've got all that stuff, but we're regularly breaking it. So it's easier to fix what you broke than to start over from scratch. But Musk, for instance, when you brought him up, he's convinced our only way out is to migrate to a different planet and leave the planet we destroyed behind, which may be right, but it's a sad statement and unfortunate. So my closing remarks, and going back to the topic that we're talking about on OS, is right now where we're focused on is really trying to figure out what the next age is going to be like. Is it going to be more like the first computer age, or is it going to be more like the second or third? And right now we're trending towards the first. With Lenovo developing their own OS, with cloud providers developing their own processors, we're starting to look more and more like we're going back to the old days, where people were vertically integrated. That's a lot less efficient. But it can be more performant, because what results then are things that are purpose designed for the tasks they're going to do, as opposed to a lot of products that are trying to be all things to all people. Now we have AGI coming, artificial general intelligence, and that will be another, because right now we're not at AGI. We are emulating AGI, but we don't have AGI yet. And with AGI, we do get back to that opportunity to go back to more of a level common technology field where one set of technologies can be dominant. And we're going to have to be very careful that whatever company dominates in that future age, and it could just be one company, but that whoever that is focused on the betterment of society and the world. Otherwise, as I say, that outcome where there's a world of AIs and not a lot of people, that'll be the end game.
Thank you, Professor Rob. I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible. You know that World Talent Economy Forum, we are heavily engaged with the emerging economy. Yesterday, we finished our workshop with the youth communities uh, and presidency. We attended the presidency universities, and I believe that many of the students and the faculty and the community from Bangladesh, they actually getting a very interesting idea about technology, about modern science, engineering through World Talent Economy Forum. I want to give special thanks to Mr. Rob Enderley as well as Madam Ali Rice for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forums. I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible with the government agency, with the corporation, with the academia. It will be helpful because it will help us to minimize the gap in between developed nations and developing nations. This is valuable for us. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.
Thank you.